Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, Numerics with Nadia. In today's video, we are going to go over positive and negative integers, but we're going to do this through different types of word problems. So the practice problems for this lesson are going to be broken up into three. The first one is going to be banking type questions. In this, we'll learn the difference between a credit and a debit, also the difference between a deposit and a withdrawal. Then the second type of question we're going to have for today's lesson is word problems that involve temperature. So our temperature is either going to be above or below zero, and we're going to go through the two types of systems we use to measure temperature. And the last type of question we're going to have are questions based on elevation, so either above or below sea level. So now that we've gone over the roadmap for today's lesson, you guys know what time it is. It is practice time. So to start out, we're going to get into part one of our practice questions, and these questions will be banking type questions. So to start off, we need to go through some words and terminology that we're going to be seeing here. So what we're going to do, we're going to set up a little chart. We're going to go through each word and define it. So to start out, the word credit means when money is deposited into an account. And when something is deposited, we'll get into what that means in a little bit as well. A deposit is positive. So I'll write a positive sign next to credit. Now for debit, the definition would be when money is withdrawn from an account. And when you withdraw, it's like taking something away. So that would leave us with a negative sign for the word debit. Now we're getting into our third definition here. The word fee is a type of charge, and a charge is something you have to pay. So that would also have a negative sign. Now we will define what a deposit is. So a deposit increases the amount of money in an account. So a deposit would have a positive sign as well. And now we will define our last term for these types of questions. And the last term is what we call a withdrawal. So withdrawal is the opposite of a deposit. A withdrawal decreases the amount of money in an account, and a withdrawal would have a negative sign next to it. So these signs that I've drawn next to each term will dictate whether we add or subtract the value. So now we will get into our first practice question for today's lesson. This question is a little bit long, but it's going to help us practice how to decode the question. So for question one, it says, for Maya's 12th birthday, she received $200 in cash from her mom. Her mom took her to the bank to open a savings account. Maya gave the cash to the banker and deposited into the account. The banker credited Maya's new account and gave her a receipt. 1 week later, Maya deposited another $40 she earned as an allowance. The next month, Maya asked her mom to withdraw $30 to buy a new shirt. Maya's mom explained that the bank charges a $5 fee for each withdrawal. How much money will Maya have in her savings account if she buys the shirt? So I know that this question is really long. There is a full paragraph worth of information here, but let's go through and highlight and decode this question. So first, let's highlight in yellow any of the terms that we notice that we have just defined. So we see the word deposit, credit, deposited, withdraw, and fee. And now let's go through and highlight our numbers. So we have $200, we have $40, we have $30, and $5. So now we're going to try to figure out what these numbers mean, and are they going to be positive, negative? How are we going to solve this question? So to start off, it says that she received $200 in cash from her mom. So that would make this $200 positive, right? Then the next number we have is $40, and that was also deposited, so that would also be positive. Next, we have $30, but it says a withdrawal of $30, so that would make the $30 negative. And lastly, we have that $5 fee that the bank charges. The $5 would also be negative because it is a fee. And now we'll go through and just add and subtract. We know that 200 plus 40 is 240. We know if we add by a negative, it's the same as subtracting, right? So 240 minus 30 gives us 210. 210 minus 5 gives us 205. So 205 would be our final answer for our first question, our banking question. All right, you guys, now that we've gone through our first type of question, which was the banking question, now we'll get into our second type of question, which will deal with temperature. Now, as I mentioned in the intro, temperature is measured in two scales. It's measured in Fahrenheit here in the United States, and it's measured in Celsius pretty much everywhere else in the world. And we will do examples with both types just so you guys are familiar with both. And an important note for you guys is that 0 degrees Celsius is the same as 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So that freezing point is 0 degrees in Celsius and 32 degrees in Fahrenheit. So now that we've gone through that, let's get into a few examples for temperature. For number 1, it says at noon, the temperature in New York was 63 degrees Fahrenheit. By late afternoon, the temperature had risen by 7 degrees Fahrenheit. What was the temperature in the late afternoon? So let's highlight what we're working with here. We have two temperatures, right? We have 63 degrees Fahrenheit and 7 degrees Fahrenheit, and we know that it has risen by that amount. So we're going to take the 63 and add that 7-degree increase to get 70. So 70 degrees Fahrenheit would be our answer for number 1. Now we'll get into our second example for the temperature questions. For number 2, it says that the temperature in Switzerland, so Switzerland is outside of the US, right? We're expecting it to be measured in Celsius. So it says that the temperature in Switzerland was 8 degrees Celsius at midnight. By dawn, the temperature had dropped 12 degrees Celsius. What was the temperature at dawn? So again, here we're going to highlight our two temperatures. We have 8 degrees Celsius and we have 12 degrees Celsius. And then it says that the temperature dropped, right? So we are going to subtract. So we will take our starting temperature of 8 and subtract 12. When we do 8 minus 12, we get negative 4. So our answer would be negative 4 degrees Celsius for number 2. And if you guys struggled with adding or subtracting negative integers, please feel free to watch the other videos that I have done on this topic before continuing on in this video. So for part 3 now, we're going to get into our elevation type questions. And elevation is basically how you are located in comparison to sea level. So I'm going to draw a little diagram for us that will illustrate what elevation is. The little bar in the middle is 0, and that means sea level. And above would be positive elevation, and below would be negative elevation. So as I mentioned, 0 is sea level. What types of things do we find above sea level? Well, we find things like birds, right? Things that can fly, humans, all that type of stuff above sea level. And then below sea level, we have sea creatures, right? So I have sharks over there as our example. And again, to reiterate, positive elevation means above sea level. 0 elevation means at sea level. And then negative elevation means below sea level. So take a good look at this little diagram and the notes here, because this will help us decode any type of word problems that deal with elevation. So now that we've gone over the terminology, let's get into a few questions that deal with elevation. For part A, it says, a whale is at the surface of the ocean to breathe. What is the whale's elevation? So if a whale is at the surface of the ocean, well, that would mean that they are at sea level, right? And we know that sea level would be at the elevation of 0, right? So if you scroll back up or if you rewind, that's where that line was. Our sea level is just elevation of 0. So we can either write elevation of 0 or you can just write 0, but 0 would be our answer for part A. Now we will get into part B, still dealing with our whales. For part B, it says that the whale swims down 300 feet to feed. What is the whale's elevation now? Okay, so we're starting at the surface of the ocean, right? We're starting at 0, and now we were swimming down 300 feet. So if we think about that, that would mean that we are 300 feet below sea level. And if we're 300 feet below sea level, we could either write it like that, 300 feet below sea level, or the other way we could write it is just negative 300. And since our units here are feet, it would be negative 300 feet. Now we'll move on to part C. This is the last part and last question for this video. I know we've done a lot of work here, but this is the last part. For part C, it says that the whale swims down 100 feet more. What is the whale's elevation now? All right, so for this one, we were already at 300 feet below 0, right, from part B. So if we're already at that negative 300 feet and we are swimming down 100 feet more, well, we would start with the negative 300 and we would be adding more negative, right? Because we're going 100 feet more or 100 feet deeper in the ocean. I'll draw a little diagram on the side here just so we can see what this would look like. So we have our negative 300 and we are going 100 feet deeper. So that would be negative 300 plus negative 100, or adding by negative is the same as subtracting. So our answer would be negative 400 feet, or if you want to write it the longhand version, it would be 400 feet below sea level. And again, if you guys need help adding and subtracting positive and negative integers, I do have a few videos on that. I have a video on how to multiply and divide them as well. So I would encourage you to go and watch that video and maybe rewatch this video after you have done so. But that is it for today's lesson. Thank you guys so much for watching. It was a long video, so good job keeping up until this point. Feel free to like the video if you enjoyed it. Comment if you have any other questions or if you would like a part 2 of this video down below. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you guys next time.